ready.
Well, before we start, give me an idea of how long you want this to last.
As long as you want it to. Probably 20-30 minutes if you
Okay.
can.
Yeah.
If not, we can do.
And how much about me versus Vietnam? That's what we're kind of talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to know your story.
Okay.
So, and if you want to share any memories or anything, you can share those too. And
Okay.
Alright, to get started, what branch of the military did you
why
serve
don't you
in?
have to state his name first?
Oh. So what's your name?
Okay, well, let me start with who I am and how I arrived in the service. My name is Scotty Ratliff. I was born at Fort Washakie, Wyoming. I was raised on a ranch north of Pavilion. I had a sister, but I was raised in a family that my grandmother was Native, my mother's Native, and we were always raised to be pretty patriotic. That but most people were back then. It wasn't unusual that you just automatically had a lot of respect for the country. So along comes Vietnam, and at the time I was in college, not doing very well. In fact, I had dropped out and had made some bad choices, and I wasn't in trouble, but I wasn't headed in any direction, and I got drafted, and so it was unusual to some degree. I was 24 years old when I was drafted, which is most people are drafted are 18, 19, and I went to Fort Bliss, Texas. It was in El Paso for my basic training. From there I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana for what's called AIT, and from AIT I went to Saigon. And Saigon is, when I got there, it was called the 90th replacement. And what that meant was they had this huge base with, I don't know, probably 3,000 or 4,000 soldiers on it. And then you have all these different units throughout Vietnam, and they're fighting. And as they lose 2 or 3 people here and 4 or 5 people over there, they communicate that to Saigon, and Saigon replaces the people as they're needed, okay? So I didn't go over there as part of a unit. Some people did. There was people that came, from a certain, the Calv or Airborne, or my unit that I ended up with was 25th Infantry. And they had been stationed in Hawaii before the war, and then after the war got started, they were north of Pleiku, probably, I don't know, I'm guessing 100 miles. I don't know. You didn't ever drive in a car someplace, and anyhow. So I got to 90th replacement. I was there for about a week, and then I was assigned to 25th Infantry, but they had what they called in-country training. And what that meant was that there were certain places you go and you kind of learn a little bit more about what Vietnam's like and what the war's like. As it happened, I hit Pleiku about the same time monsoon hits. And here in Wyoming, we don't know what a monsoon means. I mean, it's like hurricanes, but we don't have hurricanes either. This monsoon would rain maybe 1.5 feet of water a day. I mean, you're just drenched. And I'll never forget, they sent us out on this patrol. And we went up into the hills, and they had us dig a foxhole. There's 2 people per foxhole. And you dig them a little bit deeper than this table, maybe maybe 3 feet deep, and you're sitting in there. And it started to rain, and within 10 minutes, our entire hole was full. I mean, it was just like you're sitting in a big pot of water. But what was weird about it is, as it rained and that, the ants came out, and we had ants that was about an inch long, and you're sitting there all night long, and you feel them crawling up and down your sleeve, and they must not have bit, because I don't remember that part of it. But anyhow, the rain was really an experience. Then the other main experience I remember at Pleiku, they had a deal. Oh, it was like a concrete wall. It was about 4 or 5 feet tall, and then they had these little stalls that was about maybe 6 or 8 feet wide, and people walk up into that stall, and then they'd throw a hand grenade. And so you take a hand grenade in your hand and you pull this pin, and then it's live, but there's a trigger on it, and when you release it, it's got like 2 or 3 seconds till it goes off. So you're supposed to lob it or throw it, whatever you're gonna do. Well, I was maybe 3 or 4 stalls down, and there was an instructor in there with this kid, and he just froze up. He's just standing there, the pin's out and thing, and he just got unbelievably scared. He's standing there with that thing, and the instructor was saying, throw it. And the instructor started over there for it, and then the kid just turned around and just took off running. Well, it didn't kill either one of them, but it certainly did a bunch of damage to them. And so that was my first experience with war kinds of thing. Yeah. And you can watch movies all day long. I mean, I've seen some war movies before the war, after the war. Nothing prepares you for seeing another human being with parts of their body gone, and it changes your thoughts for life. It really does. I mean, I could still close my eyes and picture that deal, and just the horror of 2 people laying there with parts of their bodies gone. So anyhow, I'm not trying to make this gory, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the gore of it, but it's certainly a part of war. And I think sometimes I get really upset when I hear in this country our need for protecting the Second Amendment right. I have guns, and I've hunted all my life, and all my family hunt and have guns, but there's so much more responsibility goes with a gun than just owning a gun. And I hear people today say, well, anybody comes around my place, I'll by God protect myself. Well, you should protect yourself, but make sure you're ready to do what you think you're gonna do, because once you fire those things, once you throw that grenade, once you do any of this stuff, you have to live with those consequences. And I'll share one more story along that line, and then try to make it a little bit more pleasant. So I was on they called them LP and OP. One's a listening post and one's an observation post. Observation is during the day, listening is during the night. And typically it's a 3-person crew. So during the day, 2 people sleep, 1 person watches, and you do that for an hour, and then but you're always ready to sleep in the service. You're any given second, if they tell you got 20 minutes to sleep, you just like that, and you'll learn to go to sleep at the drop of a hat. So anyhow, I'm on this observation point. The other 2 are asleep, and there's this guy walking, maybe from here to that flag, and when you yell latte, latte, that means stop. And I'm yelling latte, latte, and I'm thinking, what the hell am I gonna do? I don't know if that's a good or bad guy. Cause see, I need to back up a little bit because we were fighting in South Vietnam.
Yeah.
They were our ally, they were our friends. We were there theoretically to protect them from North Vietnam. But guess what? They all look the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're both Vietnamese. One's just, it's like one lives in Idaho and one lives in Wyoming, but they still are Vietnamese. And you could look at them all day long and you can't tell one from the other. Their languages are same. Their religions are same. They're just, so you never knew who was really the enemy. And even like we were so unbelievably cautious because when you're in training, they talk about these kids that will have bombs strapped to them, and they'll walk into a herd of people and pull the plug. It's a suicide mission. It'll kill them, but it'll kill others. And yet, you don't want to go just firing at kids because they're coming down the road. So that was some of the horror of it. Anyhow, this guy that was walking, I started yelling a lot at him. I'm thinking, man, I'm gonna have to shoot this man if you don't stop. And luckily, he sort of, raised his hands, and so I didn't have to. But it's one of those horrible things. You're mentally saying, is that an enemy or is it not? And I don't want to shoot somebody that's not my enemy. I didn't really want to shoot anybody, but that was there. There were some funny things happen too. So the way it was set up where I was at, we would go out on these things called search and destroy. And you're going to areas and you're searching for the enemy, and like a lot of times they would be in what there's called spider holes. They're about a foot and a half big and maybe 3 or 4 feet deep. And it's all pretty jungly. There's a lot of trees and brush and stuff. And these guys would dig a hole in there and then they'd cover it with brush. And they might stay in there for 2 or 3 days. So you walk right past them and you wouldn't know he was there, and then all of a sudden you're in an ambush. So we would go out on these search and destroys, and you're going down paths looking for these spider holes, and sometimes you find them, sometimes you don't. But anyhow, we were out on a search and destroy, and we'd set up for the night in this rice paddy, and I hadn't been there very long. So this is a whole company, so there's about maybe 60 people in there. Big area we're securing. And again, you're supposed to, at night, 2 people stay awake and 1 sleeps, so that if one of the people does fall asleep, you got somebody. So I'm there in that thing, and that your feet are in the water, but you're up on the bank, and you're just laying there for like all night long. Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever kind of just started catching yourself falling asleep, but your head's bouncing. All of a sudden, something hit me in the head, and I thought, oh shit, I've been shot. Well, it was a frog. It had just jumped up and hit me in the face, and I wasn't shot, but it certainly did. It certainly did wake me up for the night. Another thing we did that was kind of funny, it probably isn't as funny as we thought it was, but a lot of times when we was in the field, we ate what's called sea rations, and they come in a can, and God only knows how long they've been in a can in there. It's just like canned something, but they had what they called pound cake. It was kind of a bread that was like eating crust. I mean, you just boy, you had to just be committed to eat it or you'd never get through it. And so there was 4 or 5 of us guys that we'd take our pound cake and take a chunk of it and throw it out there and see whose bread was gone first, the ants carrying them off. And it looked funny to see, a piece of bread this big with an ant toting it down the road. So I don't know if that's funny, but it was something we did that was fun. So I'll tell you about the day I got shot, and then kind of how my career there ended. And then maybe I can answer some of your questions. And so we were on a search and destroy, and I was on a machine gun. And we went down this creek. It was a pretty area. There's a lot of foliage. And we went down to this village and looked around, and we'd found 1 or 2 spider holes on the way down. Coming back up, and we set up for lunch. And when you set up for lunch, your machine guns go to the perimeter, the outside, because we got more firepower than guys with guns. And so we secure the place. There's usually three different machine guns, and then you're sitting there. So it just all of a sudden, it felt like somebody had pulled a light switch, and there's just this shooting everywhere. And we had evidently just sat down right in the middle of 40 or 50 of those spider holes. And they just popped up, and I mean, they're whacking us. And I got shot, and when I did, it blew me forward. And I seen this arm fly out in front of me, and I'm laying there, and it's about 118, 20 degrees. I mean, it's hot, and it's humid, and I had what they call a sucking chest wound, which means my lung had been punctured. And as it turns out, it also severed the nerves into my arm. But the sucking chest wound was what was miserable. I didn't ever experience any pain. It severed the nerves, and I've never felt this arm since. But I was laying there gasping for air, because when you breathe, it's sort of like trying to blow up a balloon that the other end's got a hole in it. Yeah. And that's how I breathe. Just begging for air. So we're in this fight for, I don't know for how long, maybe, because I think I was going in and out of shock. Maybe, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. And the helicopters came in. So they drugged me back to a kind of a safe area and loaded me on a helicopter and hauled me to what's called a field hospital. And this field hospital, they kind of put Band-Aids on you and start giving you IVs. And it's kind of interesting, my IVs, I don't know if you can see the scar here on my arm. Well, I got one of those on each arm and one of them on my ankle, on each ankle. So what they do is they're called cut downs, and they actually cut you down till they get to your vein, and then they don't use a needle. They stick the tube itself right into your vein so they can give you blood. And so I may have this wrong because it's been a long time ago, but my memory serves me. We hold about 8 pints of blood, and they gave me 32 pints of blood. So I was losing a lot of blood, and anyhow, they got me with all these things going in and out, and then put me on an airplane and flew me to a place called Quinyon. And there they started doing surgery on me, and they opened me up and sewed my lung, and they stopped the bleeding, and I don't know what else they did, whatever they needed, keep me alive. And so I was there in Quinyon for about 2 weeks, and then they flew me to Japan. and I spent a month in Japan, and then they flew me back to the States, to ultimately to Denver, to Fitzsimmons, and I spent a year in the hospital there, and they finally discharged me. So that's kind of my nutshell. There's some questions you'd like to ask?
Yeah, so do you know if some of those like friends you were talking about survived the war?
Well, there's people that survive the war and then don't survive it because, you know, there's after effects that you have no earthly idea about. I think the suicide rate amongst Vietnam vets is one of the highest in the nation. So they survive the war, but some of those nightmares that they go through, they can't survive. There's Agent Orange. You know, there's you know, just different things. A lot of malaria. I didn't get either of those, but like I got some Agent Orange, and it caused me to increase my diabetes. So I don't know how else to answer you.
Alright. So, what happened to your life after the war?
Well, that's interesting because I had 2 arms when I went into the service and only one when I came out. And I tried college twice before I went to the service, and I just couldn't get myself settled down to study. And, you know, I had to have a serious talk with myself. I mean, honestly, that I wasn't going to be able. I had a wife with 2 kids and a third one that was due any day, and I had to support them. And I, you know, what do you do with one arm? I'd tried oil field work, and I was raised as a cowboy, and neither one of them are you very good at with one hand. So it became pretty clear to me that I needed a job where I used my mind versus my body. So I started college, and I was living in Denver, going to Fitzsimmons when my family moved all down there. So I went to Arapahoe Community College for 2 years, and then I went to Black Hills over in Spearfish, got a teaching degree, and then the University of Wyoming recruited me, and I got a master's degree in guidance and counseling. I came back here to Riverton, and I was Indian Ed coordinator for the state of Wyoming for a year, and then I went to work at the college, and I worked up there for 25 years as a counselor and off-campus administrator. And then the last 22 years, I worked for the U.S. Senate as a tribal liaison. So that's kind of.
So, what do you think students should learn about Vietnam today?
Oh, thank you for that question. Thank you. That is. Well, first of all, we should know in truth what war means. And I'm for some wars and against some wars. I was very much against going into Iraq. I thought it was making the same mistake we made in Vietnam. We couldn't win that. We didn't even know why we were going in. They said there was weapons of mass destruction. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but they never found them. And we had no plan to win. So we had no business going there. I'm in favor of us being supportive of Afghanistan. I think, not Afghanistan, I didn't mean that, of Ukraine. So I think there's a time for war, but I honestly think the leaders that step up to the plate have to absolutely know why they're going and how it's going to work out. You can't just, you can't just be like a schoolyard bully that just wades into fights because thinks it's the right thing to do. You gotta really intellectually, and the military has lots and lots of information. You just have to analyze it right, it's never made sense to me. We fought the Korean War. We went there to help South Korea fight North Korea, but we're fighting in South Korea. Same with North Vietnam. We wanted North Vietnam to stop, and so we go to South Vietnam to fight, and you know, it wasn't a war we could win.
Well, do you have any questions for me?
Well, I hope you never have to go to war, but I hope you keep your patriotism and your love for this country. It's a wonderful country. It makes mistakes. Hopefully it learns from them.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you for asking me.